Most of you have heard of the Easter Bunny, yes? But you may not have ever heard of the Easter squirrel. So prepare for a new story this morning that will enlighten your Easters from this day forward. It seems there was a huge infestation of squirrels in nearly every church in the Lee Summit area a number of years ago. And it was causing quite a concern, as you might imagine. Squirrels can be rather pesky little critters, you know. So each of the different congregations around the area was debating how they were going to handle this issue of the infestation of the squirrels, and the Presbyterians decided that the squirrels were predestined to be there. So they just left them alone. And for days and for weeks and for months and for years, the squirrels inhabited that little Presbyterian church down the street. The Baptists, they decided that they would be a little more inventive. They decided to smoke the squirrels out. And so they set upon the journey of that endeavor. It worked for a few days, but it didn't take long before all the squirrels were back once again, and so the problem was not really solved. The Lutherans decided to humanely trap the squirrels, releasing them in a forest nearby. Those squirrels also returned shortly thereafter. But here, you can all be very proud of this, as am I, at Unity Village Chapel, Reverend Erin decided to baptize the squirrels and make them all members of Unity Village Chapel. And now we never see them except for Easter Sunday. So be sure that you welcome all the squirrels in the room this morning. And if you happen to be a squirrel, I just want to tell you, you are welcome here because we love the divine and perceive it in everybody and everything. Happy Easter to everybody, especially to the squirrels. And happy Easter to Reverend Erin. Can we just take a moment right now to send her a collective happy Easter note? I'll say it first and then you repeat it to me, because if she's not listening now, I'm sure she will be listening at some point in the future. We want to make sure that she knows she's in our loving embrace on this Easter Sunday. Happy Easter, Rev Erin. Together, happy Easter, Rev Erin. And so it is, so it is, so it is. I was interested to find a post on her Facebook page by one of my favorite authors, whose name is Jim Palmer. And Jim Palmer is currently the founder and director of the Center for Non-Religious Spirituality. I made reference to him briefly last week for the Palm Sunday service. He's got an interesting background in that he was associated with, actually he was raised as a Catholic, and then he was associated as a quite a renowned evangelical Christian fundamentalist pastor. And he's had a series, actually, of different awakenings along the way. Part of his awakening, the most recent awakening that he experienced, was to recognize that there was a depth to the life, the teaching, and the teaching and the ministry of Jesus Christ that he had not really fully comprehended. I think as you hear his words, you'll realize that perhaps the Fillmores, more than 100 years ago, had this same revelation as to the real merit and meaning of the life of Jesus. Before I share this, I just want you to know, Jim Palmer does not mince words. So some of this is a little harsh, especially maybe for an Easter Sunday. But I wanted to share it with you nonetheless, because I believe with all my heart that it speaks truth. There was a Jesus before Christianity. He stood for the inherent worth of every human being. He denounced the religious lie that humankind was separated from God. And he told people to find heaven within themselves. Does that sound a little familiar to you? He chastised people for sitting around waiting for God to save the world and challenged them to wake up and save it themselves. Jesus rebuked those who tried to make a religion out of him and insisted that everyone is a Jesus. He proclaimed that the hope of the world is not floating up in the sky, but present in our own hearts. The religious establishment hurriedly condemned him to death for blasphemy, while the political regime executed him for sedition. Very few people truly sign up to live as Jesus lived. It is much easier to make Jesus into a religion and sing about him on Sundays and get all dressed up for Easter. So I take those words in for myself and encourage you to take them in. in the possibility that the greatest way you could ever celebrate this Easter season and the life, the teaching, the ministry, the crucifixion, the resurrection of this man, Jesus Christ, is to, as I mentioned last week, emulate the one you celebrate. It's so easy, my friends, and I say this with all due respect, but it's easy to worship Jesus. You say some kind words, you get down on your knees, you beseech and you pray, whatever. It is not easy to follow him. It is not easy to live in the rebellious nature of his spirit, challenging the reports of time and space and losing your preoccupation with what's going on in the world outside of you as you increase your preoccupation, as you absorb yourself in what is going on inside of you. And I can tell you this from my own experience. The stuff that goes on out here is a clamor, is a turmoil, is a trouble. But the stuff that's going on deep within you at the center of your being, it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any finer. It doesn't get any more loving. It doesn't get any more peaceful. It doesn't get any more joyous than that. And the only way we will ever experience all of those qualities, the love, the peace, the joy outside of us, is when we have rediscovered them, remembered them as dwelling within ourselves. Now, from that wellspring, we can pour forth into the world outside and around us something of true value. We are not contributing, you see, to the clamor and to the controversy and the turmoil and the conflict that I understand is constantly clamoring for our attention out here, because we're discovering it is possible to release ourselves from preoccupation with the world outside of us and increase our preoccupation, absorb ourselves in this internal reality. So it's about emulating the one that we're celebrating. It's about, as we say in unity, recognizing our true identity as the Christ and then expressing that, moving that energy out into the world. For at the end of the day, all this world is a conglomeration of energy. And it's a conglomeration of whatever kind of energy you and I are pouring into it, moment by moment by moment. I'll share with you, as I did previously here at Unity Village Chapel, what I've come to believe to be an understanding of truth. And I'm not asking you to accept this or to deny it. I'm simply sharing it because I believe it is in the sharing of our perspectives, our understandings individually of truth, that we grow and expand in our awareness. I believe that we have an internal, authentic nature. In Unity, we call this the Christ. We don't see Christ as the last name of the gentleman who lived 2,000 years ago. We see it as a state of consciousness that we are all capable of experiencing and living from. So this is our authenticity. This is the nature from which God has created us. It's comprised of authentic energy, and it produces an authentic experience of life. Jesus called this the kingdom. It's peaceful, it's appreciative, it's joyous, it's abundant, and in a word, it's loving. Now, all of us also have, I believe, again, take it or leave it, an external, inauthentic nature. And there's nothing wrong or right or good or bad about either one of these experiences. We all have both of them from time to time. It's just simply noting that there's an authentic nature and an inauthentic nature that's externally oriented, that's comprised of inauthentic energy and produces an inauthentic experience in our day-to-day lives. And traditional Christianity refers to this as hell. You ever spent a day or two or three or four or more in hell? Yeah, you don't have to wait until after you pass away from this earthly plane to spend some time in hell. You can go there anytime you want to allow yourself to become preoccupied with your external inauthentic nature, which always is filled with condemnation, conflict, a sense of incompetency or inadequacy, and a sense of lack. All of that being fearful in its orientation. So you have two different ways of looking at yourself this morning, I believe. One of them is your authentic nature, which is love, or your inauthentic nature, which is fear. And an illustration for this came to me a number of years ago when my son shared with me his observation about life. He says, Dad, he grew up in Unity, so I do listen to him most of the time. He says, Dad, life is like a video game. He said, it's actually a video game inside of a video game inside of a video game inside of a video game, but to try to keep it simple this morning, I want to equate it to like a virtual reality experience, where now we have the ability to serve as the conduit through which imaginary characters, including ourselves, dwell in a virtual reality, in a game that we are playing by moving controls one way or another, or moving ourselves in today's world one way or the other. So you have two different experiences going on here. You have the you that is actually operating the, if you will, the video game or the virtual reality. You're the one that's moving the players out onto this screen, this drama that's happening in front of you. You have that aspect of yourself, and then you have the characters themselves. Remember, these are all characters that you have created through the power of your own imagination, including your own self-image. And that self-image for a lot of us has not been one that we've been very proud of. It's one we have every reason, in fact, to fear. But remember that one of these is you, and that's the one that is at the control. That is the one that's creating or playing the game. And the other one is the one that is experiencing the drama of what is being projected into the virtual reality or the video game. One's you, the other is an imposter, a fantasy character. But we forget this, don't we? Because you see, we become externally preoccupied. So all we can see and all we're reacting to is what's on the screen of this video game, instead of realizing that we're the operator. We're the one that has the ability to impact this drama in any way that we so choose. I believe that most of us, I'll just speak for myself, have been preoccupied with our inauthentic nature for most of our lives. And we're just now beginning to recognize there's this authenticity, there's this Christed nature, there's this divine aspect that's never gone anywhere, but perhaps we have forgotten about it, but it's still the truth of our identity. We are gradually remembering this. And Jesus actually, I believe, perfected the art. He became a master at withdrawing his preoccupation from what's going on out here all the time to becoming preoccupied with that which was going on deep within him. So he wasn't distracted. And this is the thing. We look at the world and we say, how can we profess that there's only one presence and one power and it's God and it's good? The world is a mess. This does quite often appear to us to be a mess, does it not? A wretched mess. But remember, that's just the virtual reality out there. There's an internal reality. There's an authenticity to your being in every moment. You just need to give it your attention. You need to become preoccupied with it. You need to become saturated, immersed in it, to the same degree that for many of us, we've become so immersed in the world that's going on outside of us. So if we want to emulate the one we celebrate this Easter, we can commit ourselves to losing our preoccupation with everything that's happening outside of us. There's not an answer out there, my friends. I hate to tell you that. And if we don't know it by now after countless millennia, we never will. But there is an answer within you. There is a space within you that once you tap into it, you have the ability to emit an energy that can change reality as you have known it. So the question then becomes, how do we move from preoccupation with everything that's going on out here to preoccupation with what's going on within us? How do we emulate the Jesus Christ that we celebrate? And I'll share it with you in just a few succinct points this morning, those being free will, detachment, communion, or prayer and meditation, self-awareness, and forgiveness. Any one of these is a lifetime endeavor within itself, okay? I'm just giving you that warning before we get too much farther along with this. Any one of these points that I'm going to mention to you, these 5 points, can be an assignment for a lifetime. And I have found that sometimes right when I think I'm on the brink of a total revelation, I'm actually just at the beginning of the stepping stones to a new level of awareness, if you perhaps noticed that yourselves. Oh, I wake up in the morning, I do believe I might be enlightened today. And then I get out onto 470, and I don't feel so enlightened anymore. So it's a process, all right? It's a process, and we want to be loving and forgiving ourselves all the way through it. Let's start with free will. The story you tell is the life that you live. The story you tell is the life that you live. The story I tell is the life that I live. Will you say that with me? The story I tell is the life that I live. So what's the story? What's your storyline this morning? Or what's your storyline been throughout your life? Because whatever you're telling yourself, remember, there's power in your thought. There's power in that which you identify yourself to be. So what is it this morning? Are you making up a story about your absolute and authentic identity? Or are you making up a story about your fantasy image of yourself, your inauthenticity that you've put out into the world? So that's the first one, free will, just to realize you're free to identify yourself in any way you like. Secondly is detachment, and that detachment is detachment from appearances. Betty and George live in a small town, and one of those places where everybody knows everybody's business. And one day, Betty's on her way. It's a Saturday. She's going to do some errands out here, and she's taking care of business, going down the main drag of the town, and she sees the bar over on the side of the street. And it's like early in the morning. She sees that George's truck is parked out in front of the bar, and she thinks, that's interesting, isn't it? Wonder what George's truck is doing parked out at this hour of the morning in front of the bar. She goes about her day and handles the rest of her business, and then she's coming back late that evening, driving past the bar again, and what do you know? There's George's truck parked in the same place at the bar. Next Sunday morning, Betty walks into church. She says to some of her friends, I'm a little concerned about George because, well, to tell you the truth, I noticed his truck was parked out in front of the bar all day long and well into the night, and I think this man might have a drinking problem. We need to have some kind of an intervention here. So people began to get concerned about George and so forth, and the next day George was at work, and some of his buddies came up to him and said, yesterday at church, Betty was saying some pretty intense things about you. She thinks you got a drinking problem because your car was parked out, your truck was parked out in front of the bar all day long and well into the night. So George just sort of shrugs his shoulders and says, okay, well, so be it. That night, on his way home from work, George, who lives just a little ways down the street from Betty, pulls his truck up into Betty's driveway, parks it there, and leaves it there all night long. So the point of that simple story is, don't judge by appearances. And it's not easy to do, is it? But we don't know what's really going on. What was George doing in there? We don't know. Was he even in there? We don't know. There's so much we don't know, and yet do we not jump to conclusions and assumptions all the time about external reality here based on our own fantasies and our own mind? So it's detachment from appearances, detachment from inauthentic experience, and investment in authentic experience. Next is communion, which in unity we would refer to as prayer and meditation, and it's simply releasing the preoccupation. That's what prayer really is, getting our minds and our hearts out of everything that's going on out here and really focusing more completely and deeply within ourselves to our authenticity. Number 4 is self-awareness. That is awareness of the thoughts that you are thinking and the emotions that you are feeling, because, my friends, they will always tell you which world you're dwelling in, authentic or inauthentic. Your thoughts and feelings, what are you thinking and what are you feeling, and how do you feel? What's your experience when you are in whatever thought stream you're in? If your thought stream is difficult, if you feel burdened, if you feel heavy or incompetent, you can rest assured you're looking at that identity of yourself, that nature of yourself, from an inauthentic perspective. And it's just a reminder, use your thoughts and your feelings to help you realize what nature you're dwelling in and what reality, quote unquote, you're creating in the world outside and around you. And finally, forgiveness. Forgiveness being, and I love that word, forgiving. To me, it's not an act of benevolence. So often we want to think that we'll forgive if we're feeling especially benevolent on a given day, if we're feeling especially good and what that person did was really, really bad and foul and horrible to me, but I'm going to love them and forgive them because, by golly, that's just the kind of spiritual person I am. And so often we can fall into that tendency. But what I'm talking about here is recognizing anytime you're having a feeling, an emotion, or a thought that is inauthentic, and you know that because of how it makes you feel. Anytime you're in that situation, you consciously and intentionally give that experience, that thought, that feeling over to your authentic nature. You're trapped in inauthenticity. You're trapped in egoic nature or mindset. Here's your opportunity to say, I'm going to hand this over to this higher nature, this Christed nature, if you will. And in so doing, I'm going to let it be exchanged for a deeper awareness of the truth of who and what I really am. Whenever you find yourself in inauthenticity, remember this, my friends, no resistance, embrace it. And that's hard to do sometimes because we don't want to feel that stuff. We don't want to be thinking that stuff, especially if we're good Unity students. But this is about embracing it all, no resistance, and surrendering completely to our authentic nature, our Christed nature, again, following in the footsteps of our elder brother, teacher, and way shower, Jesus Christ, asking for alignment with our authenticity, and then giving thanks regardless of any appearances to the contrary. Remember that the external world, the inauthentic experience out here, is not always going to support you in your quest for becoming a more enlightened individual. Amen? It is true. You have to stay on course regardless. A number of years ago, I was actually serving as senior minister at Unity of the Palm Beaches in West Palm Beach, Florida, after I had left Unity Village, serving here for a number of years. And one day in the mail, I got this little box addressed to Reverend Chris Jackson, Unity of the Palm Beaches. I shook it, and I realized something was in the box. I wasn't sure what it was, but it piqued my curiosity, so I opened it, and I removed from the box a small, rusty nail. And there was a little note in there that said, "We would like to send you as many of these small, rusty nails as you would like to have. Completely free of charge. The only thing that we ask is that on Easter Sunday, you give every individual that attends your service a rusty old nail that we have provided. And this is a reminder of the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice of Jesus Christ for all of our worldly sins." Well, you can imagine as a Unity minister, I wasn't too thirsty for that idea. Passing out old rusty nails didn't appear to me to be a way to celebrate Easter very much. So, but I got another idea that came to me. I don't want to let my association with the Easter holiday be one of nails and suffering and crucifixion. I'm not saying that we all haven't been through our share of crucifixions. I'm not saying that or discounting in any way what Jesus Christ in that infamous story experienced and went through with all of us. I am saying that there are better things to associate with than a cross or than a nail. And for me, it's a stone. And I carry this little stone with me as a reminder. It's symbolic to me, serves me much better than a rusty old nail. The stone reminds me that I am always free to roll away my preoccupation with inauthenticity, with egoic identity. Roll that stone away. And as that stone is rolled away, I'm able to see more clearly the authentic or the Christed nature of who I am. And every one of us has this ability, my friends. When you're down, when you're out, when you're suffering, when you're going through your own personal kind of crucifixion, remember, it's all about the stone being rolled away. It's all about you realizing I am fixated, I am preoccupied with an external reality that is not serving me, is not serving humanity in any way at all. It's not productive, it's not beneficial. I'd rather be the stone. I'd rather be the one that says I can roll away this misperception. I can roll away this identification with myself as a mere mortal, egoic human being. And I can stand in the certainty that there's something greater going on here. That's going to be clear to me as that stone is lifted away, as it's rolled away. And every one of us can do this in any moment. It's simply a matter of saying to ourselves and repeating over and over again, I am rising up. I am rising from my inauthentic nature to my authentic nature. And if you're concerned about another person, my friend, know the same for them. Remember, you have access to authenticity, and authentic energy that is extremely potent in its nature. So you can use this with other individuals. Hold that stone in your hand and say, you are rising up, not just on Easter Sunday, but in every moment of your life to a more authentic awareness and experience. And if you're troubled about what's going on in the world outside and around us, and who isn't right now, remember this, my friends, you can also direct that energy to the whole human family because you're not separated from anybody. You can say, we are rising up to the loving authenticity from which we have been created before this whole time and space virtual reality began. This Easter, you have the ability to emulate the one you celebrate. And as you depart today, I'm going to invite you as my gift to take one of these stones with you. They're at the door when you depart. Let it be your reminder that you're more, so much more, than this world has directed you to be or caused you to believe that you are. This Easter, you have the ability to realize you are risen. We are risen. Roll it away, my friends. We've suffered long enough. Let this be the Easter where we resurrect ourselves into divine authenticity. And the only other thing I want to tell you before I step down from this platform now is that my name is Chris Jackson, and I approve of this message.